Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Eddie Jennings from EJSLLC.com. This video is another in my series of RHCSA practice sessions where I'm going to talk about some of the objectives, try to demonstrate some of the concepts, and hopefully talk to you intelligently about these. I'm using this as an opportunity to assess myself to see if I know the material well enough to be able to function well on the exam. Remember, these aren't necessarily designed to be authoritative information, but I do try to make the information in this as accurate as possible. Before we dive in, I want to remind you, if you enjoy the content of these videos, make sure you click like and also subscribe and ring the bell when you do so you can be aware of when new content comes available. This video is going to be another where I combine some of the objectives together because they're closely related, and this is going to be the objectives under Manage Users and Groups for the Red Hat Certified System Administrator Exam EX200 objectives. And the objectives I'm going to hit are create, delete, and modify local user accounts, change passwords and adjust password aging for local user accounts, create, delete, and modify local groups and group memberships, configure superuser access. So diving right into it, let me open my terminal here. And we're going to make a couple of users. The command that we'll use for this is user add. I'm going to go ahead and log into sudo, or log into root rather, just where I'm not having to precede all of my my commands with sudo. So let's look at the man page for user add for a moment. And what I want to show you is this -home directory. I've seen tutorials before in the Ubuntu world where you have to define a home directory at the time of making a user. I haven't seen that in CentOS. Every time I've made a user, there's just a home directory made for them. There is one thing that we're going to look at a little bit later in the video that shows a bit of a default, but just for me, I have never had to specify a home directory, nor have I had to specify a shell either. If you want, obviously we can use the -d command for home directory, and then -s for, I believe it's S, take a look there, yep, -s for setting whatever the default shell is going to be for the user. Otherwise it'll be the bash shell. So we're going to make a couple of user accounts. We'll do user 1 and user 2. Well, maybe user add user 2 will be more effective. So I can grep the passwd file, so I can do get int passwd if I wanted to, but we can do cat etc passwd grep for user. And there are a couple of things that come back with the account used by trousers package. Anyway, and here are our two users, and they have user ID 1001, user ID 1002. They have their home directories, and we have bin bash. We don't have anything in this particular field here because I didn't add any type of comment, which I think is also known as the geckos. It's like General Electric Company Operating System, I think is what that stands for. But the little geckos value, I didn't have anything there, and we'll get to that in just a moment when we modify some accounts. So that's really all there is to user add. Now if we want to delete a user, let's just user del, which is user delete, and user 1. So user 1's gone, and we can confirm that by doing our grep for user. We see user 1's no longer there. However, if I were to ls the home directory, we still see user 1's home directory there. Also notice that we have just the user ID rather than the username for that. It's kind of curious. I haven't noticed that before. If you've deleted the user but still have the directory. Now we can do user del -r, I believe, and let's check the man page just to make sure. And yes, what that's going to do is delete the user as well as their home directory. So if you're in a situation, or you might have a task on the exam where you have an employee that is no longer working with the company, you need to delete the user account, but we need to preserve the files the user had in their home directory for either audit or for whatever reason. That's where the just user del would come in. You know, you get rid of the user, obviously can't log in anymore, but their files are around. If you need to get rid of the user as well as the files at the same time, if we do user del -r user2, then we see their home directory's gone, and then I'll use the get int this time. Grep user, they're no longer there. And if I were to like do the ID command on user2, it's going to say there's no such user. Let's go ahead and remove the user1 directory as well. So for making and deleting users, there's really all there is to it. User mod is the command to modify accounts, and there are a couple of things that I want to show you with that. Let's make another user again. So user add, we'll call you user3, and it'll let's do our get int. There we go, and there's our user3. User mod is what we'll use to alter attributes of the account, such as if I wanted to add either a description of the user or maybe a full name of the user, we can use user mod. I think is it dash uppercase C or lowercase c? Let's check man real quick. Nope, just lowercase c. If I do user mod -c and then the comment, let's say user3's actual name is Eddie Jennings, and then the user that I'm wanting to modify. All right, that's well and good. And what that did was set this value here in pass WD. So to kind of see what that's actually going to look like, I think I can do this without signing out. Let's see. Just switch user. Not listed. I was expecting that to appear in the user list, but I guess not. So let me go back into here. Perhaps I need to fully sign out to be able to see that. Oh well. Beauty of live demonstration, right? Anyway, if you want to set that value, -c will make that happen. You will also use user mod to add users to groups, such as if I wanted, let's say I wanted to make this user effectively an administrator on this machine, I would want to add them to the wheel group. If I were to do get int, I think it's just group grep wheel. All right. The user Eddie is already in that because when I made my VM, I during the install process, I decided to make this user an administrator. It feels kind of odd saying administrator because it makes me think of the Windows world, but that's effectively what the user is. If I wanted to put user3 into that, I would use user mod -a for append, G for secondary group, and I would put the username, user3. I must have messed up. Oh, yep. I need to give the name of the group and the user I'm affecting, user3. That should work better. And so let's check out the wheel group, and now we see Eddie and user3 are both in the wheel group. So that's covering your create, delete, and modify user accounts. Now for groups, and actually I guess we'll go a little bit out of order here. So the wheel group already exists, and there's probably, I'm sure there's other ways of doing this. If you have better ways or ways that you prefer doing this next task, which is removing a user from a group, feel free to put that in the comments because I'm sure folks would like to see a variety of ways of doing things. But there is a command called gpasswd. In theory, you can give groups themselves a password, and this will be the command that we'll use for it. However, I'm going to use it to remove a user from a group. So if I were to man gpasswd, and I believe it is the -d for delete user. So if I wanted to take user3 out of the wheel group, gpasswd -d user3 and then wheel, and it removing user3 from that. And if I were to get int the group, we see that user 3 is gone from it. If I wanted to make a group, that's very simple. Group add, test group. And we see test group was created with 1002 as the group ID. And let's see, so we've modified local groups and group memberships. We've added, we use user mod to do that. And then to delete, same kind of thing, group del test group. And we see that the group is gone. Pretty simple tasks, but you know, it needs to be on exams like this. This is the first of the Red Hat administrative exams, and it's stuff that you need to use. Now, next objective we're going to look at deals with changing passwords and adjust password aging for user accounts. So to change or set a password, we use the passwd command, kind of similar to gpasswd, except we're doing it for just users. So let's see, user 3 should still exist. And if I were to do passwd user 3, it's going to ask me for a password. So let's give it the best password ever, which is monkey123. This is going to complain because it fails a dictionary check, but monkey123 is awesome. It has 8 characters and numbers. I mean, what could go wrong, right? Alright, so all authentication tokens have updated successfully. So let's put this to the test. Let's sign out. I'm sure you can hear the motorcycle outside my home here. Log out. So that was a bit odd. I had to reboot my machine. Actually, I had to use Control-Delete to force it to reboot. Hopefully that's not going to happen on the exam. Typically logging out doesn't cause a problem. Maybe it's something special for the VM. But you see the login screen here, and this is what I was expecting before when I locked the user account to see the other user. And rather than it saying user 3, it is showing the friendly name that we set with the -C option with user mod. But let's see if we can sign in with monkey123. And maybe. See, probably going to take me through some of the tutorial stuff, and it's not going to have the resolution the way that I want to have that set. So we successfully set the password for that particular user. Now let's see if I can log out without crashing my VM. Yep, didn't crash the VM this time. That's good. We're going to look at adjusting the password aging. There are some commands in Linux that just, you know, the idea, a lot of these commands have the shortened names, and there are some that are just hilarious. And the one we're going to use for this is literally change age. But that spells change, and I love saying change. I think it's kind of nifty. So let's do sudo-i. I didn't fat finger the password. How about that? And if I were to just do change-l user 3, this gives us information about when the the last time the password was changed, when it expires, when the account expires, all sorts of good information. And if you need to adjust some password aging with this, this is where change comes into play. One is the -e flag, which I believe is expiring the account itself. So let's just double check. Capital E, expire date. Now, you can feed this a date. You can also use the date command to make this happen. And so let's say that I want to do this for 10 days from now. I want the account to expire 10 days from now. So what I would do is change-e. Then I'm going to start a quote, which I'm not 100% sure why I have to do this particular thing in quotes. Actually, no, I do understand, because it's looking for everything that's within that little quote there. So I'm going to do a subshell, which is this $. I'm going to do the date command. dash D, and you can look up the man pages for date to see what dash D does. And we're going to do 10 days into the future plus F%. And what that's going to do, the plus F% is going to format that date as year dash month dash day. And that's the format that I think Change will accept some other stuff as well, but I know that that particular format works. And we're going to do this on user 3. And of course it complained. Invalidate. What did I do wrong there? Well, let's see what's happening. So date dash D plus 10. Yeah, it figured out 10 day. Let's try, is it lowercase f perhaps? Or is it percent f? Ah, it's percent f. Yep. So let's try this again with percent f. And that should work a little bit better for us. And then if I were to do change-L for user 3, we see that account expires on August 22nd. Now, there was one thing that I noticed when I was doing some practice exams, and one of the list of objectives was to set account expiration for 10 days. And I noticed that even though I did plus 10 days, the date was actually just 9 days. And I think that deals with just how the date command either handles rounding or something like that. I'm not 100% sure what's going on, but the moral of the story is if you're doing this on the exam and you need to set the account expiration date, make sure that you do change-L and double check that whatever the date is truly, however far into the future that it needs to be. Now, let me look at change again with man pages. So unfortunately, I don't have all of these memorized. I'll probably take a look at that as soon-ish. But I know that you can set when the actual password expires, and I believe that is going to be the dash D. So set number of days since January 1st, since password was last changed. All right. So if I were to do change, let's do change dash D1 user 3. Change dash L user 3. So what that did was actually change the date that password last changed. I guess that's exactly what it said it would do. I was pretty sure you could use, I know you can do passwd to expire a password, but I thought you could do it with change as well. Let me look at change one more time. Notice riveting YouTube, looking at the man page. But I wonder why you would actually use dash D for that. It's kind of odd. Or at least it seems odd to me. Let's see. Min days between password changes. Value of 0 indicates user password. Max days. Yeah, that makes more sense. So if I were to let's fix this here. Change dash D. Let's do our date again. We're going to get today's date plus F%. Plus percent F. I thought that I did that right. I don't need the dash D. Yep, there we go. Change-L user 3. Okay, so now that stuff's back to normal. And then, what was that? M, I believe, was the max. Man change. Capital M, max days. So if I were to do change-M and 1, then user 3, do change-L. Okay, so yeah, that tells us that our password expires on, in the next day. So if I were to do 0, it's going to expire now. Another way to expire a password is use the passwd command. So if we were to take a look at that real quick. I usually use -E for expire for that. Also, I tend to use passwd if I need to lock an account as well. So on this note, this gets us into needing to talk a little bit about defaults. So I'm going to take a look at the Etsy login .defs file. And this is where you can set default lengths for the number of days that a password can be used. This all nines effectively is forever. Let me go back up there. If you want the users to by default have to change their password every 30 days, you would change that to 30. Another thing for defaults, notice how the users that we made had user 1001, then 1002, on and on. This is where you start those, or dictate where the minimum values are going to be in the login.defs. The other default that I want to show you is within etc default user add. This is where it dictates where the home directory is going to be made for a user. It also dictates the individual, the default login shell that users would get, and it's going to dictate the skeleton directory. And what this skeleton directory is, anything that's in this etc scale will by default be put into a new user's home directory. And just kind of case in point for that, let me go out of here. Let's do ls-al home user 3. Oh, there's lots of, because I've logged in. Yep, that makes sense. So let's make us a new user. User add user 4. And let's do ls-al home user 4. All right, so we have 4 things in there. We have the bash environment files and this hidden folder Mozilla. If I were to ls-al etc scale, we see that the same stuff is in there. So let's say that I had an objective where you want to put a text file to where any new user has this text file in their home directory, and that text file perhaps is some onboarding instructions and such. You would put that in the etc scale directory, and so that way when a new user is made, the file is going to be available for them. So the last thing I want to mention is this idea of superuser access. And this account that I'm in, my Eddie account, I'm able to use sudo either to sudo into root or to run things as root. Not every account can do this. And what I mean by that, if I were to, let me su-l into user 3. All right, so I'm now as user 3. Of course, as the root account, you can su into, or substitute user into any account and not have to use the password. And I'm as user 3 now. I'll do who am I, user 3. If I were to try to sudo let's just sudo vi. All right, so it's going to ask me for a sudo password. And let's try the correct password. And it says this user is not in the sudoers file. This incident will be reported. Now, there's a couple ways of handling this. If you want to give kind of the broad stroke approach of just give users access, you drop them into the wheel group. And the reason why that will work, let me exit out of user 3 back into root, is, actually we're going to use vi sudo. That's important when you're working with sudo. You don't just use good old vi sudo. I can't remember off the top of my head the technical reason for why that is. I just know that that's a thing. And what we notice in the sudoers file is, I'm going to go down to where we find the wheel group. All right, so what this is saying, and I'm going to see how well my memory is serving here. The wheel group on all hosts, which is the first all, can run files or can run commands and such as all users, and they can do that with all commands. So if you drop them in the wheel, they have that ability. Now you can do this more granularly as well. So let's say that I just wanted to give user 3 the ability to run vi as sudo. Now I believe you can add a file to this, rather add an entry to etc sudoers, but what I have seen just in tutorials and training and such, often what you do is create a file within the etc sudoers d that follows this this particular format. So let's put that to the test. So we're going to quit out. We have to use vi sudo, and so if we wanted to make that new file in etc sudoers-d, I will do vi sudo -f etc sudoers.d, and the name of the file is going to be user3 sudo. Of course, it gives us just an empty vi file, so we're going to do user3 on all hosts. We can sudo all users and then vi. I believe that is how that will work. So let's put it to the test. So let's do wq. All right, so right quit. Syntax error near line 1. What now? We are going to exit without changes. So I had a syntax error. So let's go back and take a look at etc sudoers. Now, those of you watching probably saw immediately what the error was, but I didn't. So let's see what's going on, if I recall correct. All right, so I might have misread that, because if you take a look at users here, notice how it is all equals that. So perhaps that's, I'll bet I made an error there. I'm going to have to definitely review that before my test as far as understanding what each all means. I was fairly sure it was all hosts equal run as all users and then all commands. But, you know, clearly I was incorrect with that. So let's try to use this particular this pattern here and see what happens with my little user3. So we'll vi sudo -f etc sudoers.d and then user3, is that, yeah, then user3 sudo. So we want user3 all equals vi. Let's see if it will accept that. Right quit. Nope, still doesn't like it. Well, that's a problem. So let's see what now. Edit sudo files again. Obviously I can't do that. And we're going to exit. All right, could, but we're making some mistakes. So let's say this happens on the exam. All right, what do? Well, you can either just freeze and flip out, or we can start looking at some man pages. So if I were to man sudoers, I believe there's a man page for that, and let's see if it will give us some information. I remember working with this, in some of my training, but it's been a while since I've touched it, obviously, because I'm making some mistakes here. So let's see if it gives us some format. I know you can make aliases, and the idea of the alias is, let's say you have a group of users, or that group of users is not actually in a group itself, or a group of commands. That's where the idea of the alias is. But what I want to see is the format of how that needs to be in the file. Let's see if it will give us any ideas about that. All right, so we have Alan here. All equals so that's saying the user can run both root and bin. Yeah. Let's see. Multiple users groups respect in which user may select any combination of users. Yeah, can run command either as root or bin, but optionally set the group to, that's what I thought the second that was, so yeah, and then may run any command as either root or bin, and optionally set the group or operator or system. So it would be Alan all equals, in parentheses, either root or bin, and then all. All right, so let's do this. We're going to copy this line. vi sudo, we're going to get this. -f etc sudoers .d user3 sudo. Alright, so let's edit this just a bit here. So instead of Alan, we're going to do user3. Instead of just individual users and groups, we're going to do all. And instead of all commands, we want just vi. I have an idea. I think I might know what might be going on with that. So we're going to try this real quick. Oh, WQ. Yep, and it complained. So what I want to do, we're going to edit the file again. I'll bet I know what's going to happen. So let's go into command mode, which vi, bin vi. Alright, so let's try this. Let's see if that will satisfy it. Right, quit. Yes, that satisfied it. Or so it looks like it satisfied it. That might have come out real loud on the recording. If it did, my apologies, because I'm excited about it finally working, or supposedly. So in theory, cat etc sudoers.d user3 sudo. So in theory, I would be able to run vi, and notice that's the absolute path to the command. I would be able to use sudo for that. So let's put it to the test. So we will do su-l user3. So first, as a control, let's try to do sudo systemctl. Alright, that didn't work. So let's now try sudo vi. And there we go. We're able to run vi. Now, that's a real basic use of that sudo file. And again, I didn't get into aliases and such. I would have to review that. And thank you for staying with me as I figure that out. Let me go ahead and put this back on the screen for you. So if you need to have that as a reference. Oh, of course I am. Yep, I am still user3. So let's try that again. There we go. But just kind of case in point, this is how it would be on the exam. I mean, if I had my exam today and I had an objective that said you need to make this particular user be able to do just this command with sudo, obviously ate a lot of time, but you know, this is how you'd be using the tools available to you to figure it out. So I believe with that, again, the easy method is just drop them into the wheel group, but if you need the more fine-grained control, you can do that here. And this out, there's one thing I need to test. Let's reboot this just to make 100% sure that this user can still sudo in. I'm fairly certain that it will, because we're editing a full-on permanent text file. But never hurts to check. I would hate to have the comments of, you didn't check to see if it works after a reboot. And I would have to say to that, you're exactly right, I did not. Alright, so here's the user, monkey123, remember the greatest password ever. My password expires in 0 days. It gave me a warning. Let's see if it'll still let me log in though. Yep, and just proof positive. Of course, this is probably going to be mice type on your screen. My apologies for that. I've heard to do sudo cat. Yep, it complains, and then sudo vi. Yes, we're in vi as as sudo. Actually, I'm just curious if I were to run. Yep, it says I am root if I run who am I, which is exactly what we want to see. So I believe that covers everything with the manage users and groups objectives. I hope you enjoyed the content of the video. Maybe you got a laugh as I was scrambling about figuring out sudo on the fly, but that's what you'd have to do on the test. Either way, thank you for taking the time to watch, and I will see you the next time.